Our kiddos can start making their way downstairs. And we'll get started up here. Gotta make sure you get all that stuff. Don't forget. Shoes, that's what it is. It's shoes. We need to make sure we have our shoes. I asked her earlier, where are they? She goes, they're in the pew. I know where they're at. Doesn't mean I remember to grab them, but I know where they're at. All right. Well, we're going to get started this morning. Yesterday, we had kind of a fun morning, a little busy, but Silas, and I say first game, it's not really accurate. It was his first jamboree, we'll say. Had his first jamboree for football yesterday morning. So this is his first time playing. It's flag football. It's pretty chill, kind of, coaches grabbing small children by the helmet and say, you stand here, your job is to block, your job is to run. Pretty basic stuff. And it's funny because, the moment you touch a helmet, their kid is like, oh my gosh, I'm moving. And then Silas's stance is like, and then it looks kind of more like he's playing patty cake than tackling, but it was entertaining and a lot of fun. But they got to do it at Memorial Stadium, so Silas is, Memorial Stadium on the turf, playing his first little game, which was a lot of fun, at least in theory. I asked him if I could tell stories, and he said it was okay. But by the end of the game, he was kind of upset. It seemed really cool. It seemed like a lot of fun, but there were kids pulling on me, and there were kids not playing the way they were supposed to, and then they just fell on me, and it was kind of like in tears because it was rough, right? Some drills and doing some basic stuff, but then you're out there and there's all kinds of pushing and shoving and kids who aren't being closely watched, who don't understand that I'm not supposed to grab this guy by the back and pull him backwards. That's not allowed in the game. And, it's kind of crazy and it's just whatever. And he is a little sensitive is the word I was trying to avoid, but sure. Sensitive, is the word for it. And so he gets a little upset. But one of the phrases we keep using in our home and that we continue to reinforce to him is whenever he, gets bumped in the arm and is like, my arm really hurts, because he's a bit dramatic as well, is that I can do hard things, right? I can do hard things. Not necessarily always the toughen up, although I will say that my dad's voice is in the back of my head saying those same words, and I sometimes let them escape my mouth as well, because there are times it's true. You just need to... Buddy, I barely touched you. You need to be able to deal with that kind of pressure just in day-to-day life. Like, that's called stubbing your toe on the couch. Like, it's rough. It's life. You got to be able to withstand a little bit of bump and bruise. But it's that kind of phrase, I can do hard things. I can do tough things. I can do things that are challenging. Because we talk about this word that you see on the screen here, this chapter that we're diving into today is gaining grit, which may not have been the word I would have chosen, because I think sometimes we have these pictures in our mind that some of it, like for me, the immediate thought that comes to mind is John Wayne, like his True Grit, right? It's a movie, or maybe Jeff Bridges if you didn't see the first one, because they remade it. And, this idea of this Western kind of cowboy, tough guy standing up, although I think the girl in that movie's got a lot of grit too. That's kind of fun stuff in that particular film. But this idea of what does it mean to be tough versus what does it mean to be, I can do hard things. Because to say just toughen up, deal with it, it hurts, but deal with it, you may not like it, but like it anyway, is kind of sometimes I think the attitude we think about when we talk about grit. Learn to like the pain, just get over it. Sometimes it's kind of that mindset I think we grab onto. But there's this different picture that I want us to understand when we talk about Hebrews 12, which we'll get to in a bit, our key verse for this week. When it comes to us and what does it mean for us to have this grit, or maybe better yet, this term endurance. And sticking with the football theme and being able to do hard things, I was kind of looking for stories about players, because it kind of reminded me of this idea of like, what am I playing for? Why am I doing what I do? Like guys who played hurt, why they would be willing to be playing hurt. And all of a sudden I came across a story that I know very well, but I kind of forgotten about. And I was like, there's no better story. to talk about when we're talking about grit and enduring than this particular guy. So we're going to show a little 3-minute clip here. Check out this story. If you're not familiar with it, you will be soon. None of the images in this are too graphic, don't stress. It's just mostly casts and stuff. There are some videos you can run across in this story that are quite disturbing and gross, but don't worry, safe.
I was stuck in a wheelchair, staring down at my mangled leg, wondering, will I ever be able to go on a walk with my wife? I'll play games with my kids in the yard. Putting my helmet back on was the farthest thing from my mind. I just kept asking myself, won't this stick? Someone did something that changed my recovery completely. He put a football back in my hands. I don't know what it was, but all of a sudden, I felt stronger, more driven, and what once seemed impossible began to come close. And the truth is, over the course of my life, that's what this game has done for me. I was a skinny, no-name kid who wasn't even supposed to play in college, let alone go to New York as a Heisman finalist, or be the first one to have his name called on draft night. And then, on a routine play, I almost lost everything. But I didn't give up. Because no, this isn't just a game. It's not about whether or not to win or quit on any given day. It's about the challenges and the commitment they require. It's about how hard and how far it will push you. It's about holding on even when it seems like the sky is falling away and everybody else is moving away. It's about recommitting yourself to something bigger. And most of all, it's about you. So to everyone out there, whether you're a part of minor leadership, a church kingdom, or working in a bigger mission, I thank you. All the men I had the privilege of standing with and playing alongside. Thank you. And I want to say thank you for believing in me. And thank you for helping me believe in myself and in the impossible. Because even though I've got plenty of spent life in here, after 16 years and giving this game everything I've got, I can't wait to see what else is in store. But first, I'm going to take a little time to enjoy a few of these thoughts with my wife. And my kids have no idea what's going on in the backyard.
A great player, dealt with adversity throughout his career and always seemed to come on top and to be the better from it. And someone that he's dealt with different coaches, he's dealt with different systems, and he's always had success. And then obviously the injury that he had, to be able to come back and lead his team into the playoffs, he showed the type of man that he is, the type of team player that he is, and I'm just grateful for the time that I had with him that really developed me to be the person that I am.
So I show that video. If you don't know, it's Alex Smith. The very quick version of this story. Drafted first overall in the NFL draft, played for the San Francisco 49ers until a young, explosive, kind of new type of talent comes along, and he kind of loses his job there, but gets an opportunity with the Kansas City Chiefs where he has a lot of success, and then all of a sudden this guy named Patrick Mahomes comes along, and he, once again, loses his job to this kind of young, exciting, explosive talent in the midst of hardship and difficulty, and then goes to play for what is now the Washington Commanders. And that's where this big hit against the Houston Texans happened. Spiral fracture, got a flesh-eating bacteria in this wound and break that destroyed his leg and nearly cost him his life. And then through all this rehabbing with military specialists who are used to the kind of injuries where someone steps on an IED and blows up their leg, manages to rehab back to where you saw him there, stepping back out onto the football field. And for some reason, I don't know, winning comeback player of the year, go figure. If you give that to anybody else, that seemed like the most useless award of all time. But this is an incredible story, but I show that video for a couple reasons, because it's all this hardship that Patrick Mahomes, the guy at the end of the video, if you don't know him, he's kind of considered like one of the best right now young guys in the league, is kind of remembering and respecting because they were together for a bit, and he's really appreciative of the influence Alex had on him, because through all of his hardships, he just kept improving and getting better and coming out on top and letting that drive him. If you get a chance, there's like a 15-minute long TED Talk, which we're not going to watch today, where he talks about the anxiety and fear that he kind of faced all of his career, and some of the advice and some of the push that he got to overcome that. And he really kind of just boils it down to the idea that someone basically said, don't worry. Like, go out there, play hard, play fast, play your best, do all these things, but don't worry. And then another friend who was like, are you living? Would always ask him this question. You saw on his shirt there, it said something about live. It's kind of this motto he grabbed onto, this idea of, am I living for something? Am I moving forward towards something else? This passage that we're looking at this morning starts off with this word, therefore. Now, if you've heard me say this before, I want to say it again. Anytime you see the word therefore, we got to stop and ask the question, what's it there for? Okay? So we look at chapter 12 as the beginning of something we're going to look at here, but it's important right off the bat with the word therefore that we stop and ask ourselves the question, what was the writer of Hebrews just talking about? The writer of Hebrews was looking at chapter 11, which we know as the hall of faith. And he's talking about these people who had faith, faith of something hoped for, not for something seen, not something we have hold of, but they're working towards something that they can't see, something they have hope in the future. And so he goes through this list of Abel offering sacrifices, Enoch, this person that walks with God that we don't know a tremendous amount about, but we see these glimpses of how he trusted in God, and the Hebrew writer writes and gives him this credit. Noah, who builds this ark. Abraham, who trusts God to give him a son. Sarah, who also just believes and has trust and faith that God would provide for her at an old age. Isaac and Jacob and Joseph and Moses and Joshua, Rahab, Gideon, some names that you may be less familiar with, but you can go hunt them down. They kind of get run off there that are mentioned in Judges. Samson, David, Samuel, these names that we hear these stories about all the time and the great works that they accomplished, and there's this kind of hall of faith as Hebrews is known. And so the writer has just expressed, we have all these examples, all these people who trusted in God, kept pressing forward towards something that was bigger than themselves, were investing in things they didn't fully understand but continued to trust God. Did they fail? Absolutely. But did they press forward towards something? Yes. And therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. This passage is saying, therefore, since we have such a great cloud of witnesses,